project idea that you're talking about.
Here we go. You can see the percentage here. We're gonna get it to 100.
Get
it
it
should
to
fly
100.
through 100. It should fly through 100. 71.
Is this the
And the
macro?
quiet stacks are at 99. Yeah.
Nice.
But it's my macro, so it's a little bit of a trained monkey on a scooter. Like it's not perfection. It is what it is. People are like, how do we fix this? Oh, you got to throw out the monkey. Like you need to just start over. This is not good. 100%. Boom. Okay, I now have an indicator's knife. I got the indicator's knife so that I wouldn't have to remake my 35 CP macro so I could make better leather. Where did it go? Right here.
And Shadow Sephiroth writes, you know that today starts the season finale, so have you guys completed the main snare quest? I have. The only thing I have yet to complete is the extra exotic weapon step. So I have the seasonal exotic, and I have like all 4 of those quests, so I might try to play some of that this week and see if I can't handle that. I think Chris was actually saying like it's best to have like all 4, and then you can go and run it once and call it a day. So I'll see if I can't do that. That's my plan. I will also probably be playing some Destiny on the 25th as well, which will be great. So we'll start I'm gonna have some fun on the 25th regardless. Boom. You ready to jump in, or we still crafting?
I'm getting close. One second.
Right. Yeah.
I just need to get this equipped. So I think this is literally an upgrade. Like it's such an item level boost that I think it's an upgrade even without materia. I'm going to put materia on it, but I think that's just how much it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you, Tom, sending me all kinds of flattery, saying I'm a beautiful bearded man. Congrats on the stand-up stuff. I hope you guys check that out today, 4:00 Central. That premieres over on Ginger Prime Comedy. And I'm going to be doing some stuff in Sanger on the 25th, and I'll be back in actually Fort Worth at Hyenas on March 11th. I tested out my set last night that I'm planning on for the 11th.
To being full comedy?
Yeah, it's going to be full comedy.
Is it all going to be paywall?
No. So how that's going to structure is the raw, uncut, uncensored version will be just like for members. So as soon as that, and that's actually in 4K. So as soon as that like is provided, like it just goes up for members and they can go watch the whole set. The video themselves, like I censor out the bad, the naughty words, and we also have edited it as an experiment to really kind of lean into what like more of a YouTube style kind of video, while at the same time maintaining the core of the jokes. So we'll throw in memes and do different things like that are all kind of in reference. And at the end of the day, like it's like, you know what, we'll just do something that I don't see anybody else doing. And then it will be broken up into the kind of like the core jokes will be turned into the shorts and the reels and, all that kind of stuff. But most likely there'll probably be just kind of one core video that goes up once a month, as I get shows and get that and that rolling. And hopefully people like it. If I don't get on a show, then obviously I'm not going to have that. But I promised Julie I would do like no more than 2 open mics a month and no more than 1 show a month. So she's not like a amateur comedian widow. Where's your husband today? Well, he's in downtown Dallas at the Improv or whatever. So,
well, great. I can see it. It probably doesn't show up in video, but like I got like 4 new gray hairs this month. I can see it.
You have hair.
It's right there. It's right there. They're very gray and they don't curl the same way the rest of it curls. They are also curly, but they curl differently. So then it doesn't lay with the rest of it. So it's just like, hello.
Hello. Boy, hello.
So.
Hey, what's up, Agent? All right, we ready to jump into Lightfall in the year ahead?
Yes.
Perfect.
Chris was going to prime me, but we're in day 2 of what was a very simple rabbit hole to dive down. And I feel like the sunlight is further away than when I first dove in.
That's how I feel Like I've often toyed around like, oh, do I want to cover the Destiny TWAB? And whenever it comes out, like traditionally, like the normal day-to-day stuff always comes out well after the time I'm like off work and hanging out with the kids. And it's like, oh, maybe I'll go cover that or read that into a microphone just so I have that. And then at the end of the day, I end up just kind of watching like Paul Tassi or like somebody else, like, oh yeah, just feed it into my ear so I know what's happening. And but today we're actually going to be diving through it because this is a pretty meaty, substantial piece of content. And so for those of you who haven't seen, Destiny like releases kind of a state of the game once a year, and they have this over on Bungie.net. So if you guys haven't read it, we're going to kind of jump through it. I actively play a lot of Destiny, usually around the expansion time and then before the next expansion time. I thought the Witch Queen was perhaps like the best narrative experience that they've delivered hands down in a long time. The changes they brought to the Witch Queen, I really enjoyed. The seasonal model, I continue to struggle with. So if you guys are looking for somebody who's like, I never stopped playing Destiny, that isn't me. Like I play Destiny in like massive amounts of consumption, and then there ends up just being a long withdrawal period that usually ends up kind of like I jumped in for the Solar 3.0. I didn't touch Arc 3.0 until just recently, so I was just like, oh, like yeah, I enjoyed the Void and the Solar and all the reworks, and Lightfall looks to be delivering things that I've had on my list for a long time, wanting in this game for a long time. But let's go ahead and dive in. I'll take the first massive paragraph, and we'll just kind of jump between Chris and I paragraph to paragraph so that we're not sitting here. I'm not butchering words so much. I feel like I'm better in the world of Destiny, but sometimes the Final Fantasy Square Enix words get me. It says, welcome to February, Guardians. My name's Joe, and you may know me as the EXO of your Grandmaster, whichever is exotic bow matches in the Nightfall. Since the Awoken on your first list and their fire team set to close, they put another hour of attempts into soloing the latest dungeon. Or maybe even the human with 3 different red border weapons equipped, trying to complete 10 separate bounties in a single match. But when I'm not logged into Destiny or on socials trying to convince people my Guardian fashion game is strong, I'm also the game director for Destiny 2. In a couple of weeks, Lightfall will be in your hands, and it's the penultimate expansion of the Light and Darkness saga and its radical acceleration towards the final shape. But as excited as we are about Lightfall, it's not about the only thing coming to Destiny 2 this year. Destiny is a massive, living, breathing organism, and that which requires to thrive, and an incredible development team with a constant update and a list of priorities that can regularly inject high-value changes. So today we're going to pull back the curtain and talk about how we see the game right now and what changes we want to make to Destiny and to continue to evolve and thrive the way we want. First, the good. We've gotten to a place where Guardians can expect consistency in the quality of content coming to Destiny 2 all year long. From the Witch Queen to the Season of the Seraph, we are incredibly proud of the high-quality shooter content and the storytelling that has been added to the game over the last 12 months. But amid this quality and consistency, Destiny 2 can sometimes feel too predictable. And while that consistency is necessary for us to be able to regularly update the game to prevent players from having to relearn Destiny every 3 months, as well as to maintain our team's health and sustainability, it's clear that too much predictability can create a lack of surprise and delight by the time some of our major updates get into your hands. So, aside from predictability, we sometimes still hear a refrain that has been sung since the beginning of our journey. There's just not enough to do. While there is plenty happening at the start of the expansion or seasonal drop, by the end of the season, we often see our most engaged players lamenting that they have run out of things to sink their teeth into. I think if they allowed you to like have your season pass that you could grind on at any point in time, that would solve a bit of that. We'll see if they talk about that here in this. It's not a problem that one more strike or additional map can solve. Destiny 2 has an incredible amount of content, but sometimes not all of our content is rewarding as engaging as we like, and sometimes we would just like to find anyone to play with. So the issues are laid out in front of us. We create 4 big goals for Destiny 2 leading to the final shape. And they expand the players' imaginations, bring challenge back to Destiny, enrich our content, and connect our Guardians. Now, none of these goals will be achieved with one change, and they're all going to require constant maintenance to remain true. But for the rest of our time together today, we would like to walk you through how we plan to address these 4 big goals in 2023.
All right. So kind of bring everybody up to speed.
Mhm.
How many expansions do we have live at the same time?
Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, Witch Queen. I believe that's what I have.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so people
and
can do
then
stuff across all of that. And that is
mhm.
all laterally gear relevant. Like,
What
is
do you
there
mean
any reason to
laterally group?
can I go get a piece from one of the older expansions and it's relevant in today's
Yeah,
item
yeah,
level?
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
Okay, so it works similar to Guild Wars, and then I can go jump through all of that. So the mountain of content is there. It's just like if in 14 you were brand new today and all relics would be relevant. Well, like, because if all exotics were relevant, that would be like all relics being relevant. And if a new player felt like they could go get a benefit, any benefit at all beyond cosmetic and achievements in getting all 57 battle relics in Final Fantasy 14, like the total number of hours is there. That doesn't mean it's fun. Like that
right,
doesn't mean going back and doing the ARR relics is engaging for all players. There are people that probably enjoy those. There are people who probably get an immense sense of accomplishment about it, even if they didn't enjoy it. But that doesn't mean that your answer to a new player who says, "Well, I hit level 90, I'm done with story. What do I do?" should just go, "Well, you should do your ARR relics." Like that's not the answer. Um, So I think that's what they're saying so far. That's my understanding as somebody that I missed the last expansion. I haven't been in Destiny in a while. I've spent a lot of time with the game, and Chris has been here in chat, kind of translating some words and stuff for anybody that's trying to keep track because these games all use different vocabulary for the exact same ideas. But that's kind of my understanding so far. So now the question is, what are you going to do to make the content more engaging if the quantity is okay? Having read the thing yesterday, where with Guild Wars they addressed like, yeah, we're happy with the quantity. We want to work on pacing. It
yeah.
sounds like Destiny believes that their problem is that the content itself is not either intrinsically or extrinsically, right? Internal or external. Like I'm either not getting enough actual rewards,
Right.
uh, just actual physical things in game, or it's just not fun enough on its own that I just want to do it.
Well, and especially as they bring up the core issue of the idea that at the start of the expansion, at the start of the season, everybody's excited about that piece of content. But then as that season goes on, and we see this across all kind of MMOs, like before the next season, it ends up being like, well, what can I really do? And I've expressed my problems and frustrations with that, where it's like, oh, I'm excited that the new season for Destiny is about to drop. Let me jump in. Oh, okay. I'm not going to jump in because like any of the seasonal progress that I'll make, it's just going to get reset. I can't, and I would like if I was able to maintain that, jump in. Like imagine, oh, you hit a level 100 or whatever. Oh, by the way, there's these other battle passes that you can kind of go grind out on that you own, you purchased. But then that would solve that problem because then it's like, oh, I know my progress is going to carry forward. Even if I decide to jump in and stay on the main, the main thing, like I feel disincentivized in the last 2 to 3 weeks of the season if I'm not active. If I'm constantly active, I'm already having fun. The game is fun, but it ends up being like when I do take those breaks, I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to start in 3 weeks, but I would start today. I would start today and carry that into the new season, but I feel like I'm just disincentivized from that.
That's where I'm at in Call of Duty. Last night I wanted to do something mindless, and so I had a little bit of downtime, and I wanted to do something kind of because in my head I did the Valentine's Day event yesterday, so I thought it was Valentine's Day. So like,
Yeah,
I had meal planned for the week, so the meals were already made because it's not a huge holiday for us. But I went and got something a little sweet to pair with our meal, and like the table was made. And I went a little extra effort in presentation, and so I got dinner all on the table. It was all laid out, beautiful, ready to go. And I was going to pick, like, my wife does not like rom-coms. She likes action movies. There's only like 2 rom-coms she likes. And I was looking it up on the TV, and my wife's like, I'm not watching a movie with you. I'm going back to work. Like, I'm working late tonight. And in my head, I was like, oh, well then screw me. Like, happy Valentine's Day. And like, I'm not married to a romantic woman. Like on our first date, we went to school in West Texas together. I looked up and it was an incredibly clear night. And one of the beautiful parts of West Texas or any desert is that you never get to see the stars quite like that. And so I looked up and the stars were just outrageously bright, like as bright as it is in this room. And I was like, wow, look at all those stars. And without even looking up, my wife, we were on our first or second date, she goes, yeah, they're up there. Like, didn't even look up. And so like, I was like, all right. But then I realized it was the 13th. And that's why she was working late last night so that we could watch a movie tonight. And so I just like within keeping track of all this, I get things mixed up. I get things mixed all in my head. I get it all jumbled. And I don't know when and where things are. So let's just go ahead and jump to the next section.
Okay. Yeah, take over.
All right. I forgot my point. In Destiny 2, we want each major update to get the gears inside our players' heads turning on what's new and what it means for the way they interact with the game. That's what I was talking about. I just want to do something mindless last night. And Call of Duty, I beat the Battle Pass, and it has 7 days left on it. So to counter your point, as it doesn't feel good if there's just a little bit of time left in the Battle Pass and you realize you can't finish it. Mm-hmm. Last night, I had a bunch of free time suddenly, and I didn't want to play Call of Duty because the Battle Pass hadn't started yet.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, I'm at the end of the Battle Pass, which means I'm about to get a mountain of content fed to me. So I also don't want to start early. So there it is. As the end of that story, I was like, that's the counterpoint.
Both sides.
The problem with Battle Passes is if you aren't going to finish it, it's not worth starting because usually all of the best rewards are backloaded. If on the other side, when you do finish it, if you want to keep playing, you feel like you're being told to screw off. Okay. In Destiny 2, we want each major update to get the gears inside our players' heads turning on what's new and what it means for the way they interact with the game. This wasn't true for all our releases in the last year, and it's going to take changes across multiple releases to get us to where we want to be. We can't break all the design bones we want to right away, so instead let's unpack how we take on the big challenge over the course of the next year. Lightfall will launch alongside Season of Defiance. And while most of this content was wrapped up before this new goal was put into place, we still have numerous seasonal quality of life changes alongside substantial iterations to our current model coming to shake things up. Starting with reducing complexity of our progression systems. This means fewer competing currencies to earn. We're doing away with umbrals and umbral energies. So we've unlocked seasonal focusing. If you want to focus an engram into a particular season weapon or armor, all you'll need is Glimmer and a seasonal engram. Additionally, seasonal engrams will be stored and tracked at seasonal vendors. So managing the engram bucket in your character's inventory will be much easier than it is today. Okay, so can we just back up?
Yeah.
Because like a lot of that's like jargon for anybody that's either been away from the game a long time or has never played. So alongside an expansion, you also have a new battle pass, right? That's what the Season of Defiance is.
Yeah. So that yeah, exactly. That's the battle pass for that. Yes.
And like what we've heard from a lot of MMOs that have realized they need to pivot over the last couple of years is one of the hard things about pivoting is that you're usually building content alongside your current release schedule. And so when you realize you need to change, that change can be substantially down the pipeline. And so you're like, hey, I need to make a change. And it's like, cool. The player will feel that 2 years from now. And so like they're always, so it seems like some of the things are locked in. And so they're deciding what they can still do. And like any aging MMO, one of their biggest flaws is currencies and players feeling both just number of currencies, just inventory bloat and currency bloat where there's 67 different types of tokens. And then in addition to that, how do you handle your reward system so that people feel like they're getting to play the way they want and getting the reward they want? You don't necessarily want all content to be capable of all rewards. You do want some things that are kind of on their respective island, but ideally that's like, oh, a better crafting item came from your crafting system and a better rating item came from your rating system. If there's a really cool mount, I don't necessarily, it doesn't always feel good if it's like, I don't like crafting, but that's my favorite mount. How do I get there?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
one of the biggest complaints that people have had also, and I've seen that voiced within Destiny because of its PvP and PvE nature. There's a lot of people who just live and breathe in PvE, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like Destiny has a verbose PvE experience, and for me, like I really like usually sit in PvP, and then until they started sunsetting content back before, and they canceled that, thankfully. But I wasn't even bothering with the PvE experience. I was like, oh, it's there, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's going away. I'm going to go do that now. And now I have more of a hybrid approach where I play both. But there were a lot of players who expressed a lot of frustration to me where they're like, why does this quest push me into the crucible? I do not want to do PvP. Can you give me another way? And Destiny has done, I think, a lot of work and a lot of good adjustments to say you could do this or that. Like, hey, yeah, like you can, oh, you want to do this? Okay, this is stasis or arc. Like it gives you at least some leverage of choice as opposed to like this is the one and only way to kind of move the needle. And I think I've really appreciated their changes across the board in that respect.
Okay. So that just kind of helps me understand. It sounds like the issues, the strengths and the issues they're having are universal across all MMOs. It feels like now that we're kind of rounding out the lap. We've read everything from New World coming out. We've listened to Final Fantasy talk about their next 10 years. We've listened to WoW talk about their upcoming. And when we did Guild Wars yesterday, and it sounds like they're all struggling from a lot of the same problems. And they're all struggling with a lot of the same issues with their solutions of it takes a while for these issues to roll out. They have to be done slowly. And a lot of them are caused by what were very good decisions at the time. A new currency, how exciting. But after you've done that 20 times in a row, people are like, okay, but now I just have to keep track of all these different freaking currencies because either 19 of your 20 currencies don't matter anymore, and that doesn't feel good, or, right, and that happens in WoW and 14 where you're like, so I have stuff from maybe a tribal quest that doesn't even matter after that point. Like, like that doesn't feel good. So like the Poetics has been a really good solution to that. Or you have like Guild Wars where now every currency is valid simultaneously, and that is just as frustrating because you're like, oh, I have 200 of each of these 90 different currencies. But it's that 91st currency is the one you needed. And you're like, oh, so I have no progress. And that doesn't feel good either. Yeah. So I think they're in the same spot. And what Destiny 1 to Destiny 2 did, Guild Wars 1 to Guild Wars 2 did, although they're much more different than Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, is basically said, or 1.0 to 2.0 basically said, this is too much. Let's just start over. But ideally, we're now in a day and age where that's not the case. I think it would frustrate a lot of people if they just if they just said, hey, the solution here is Destiny 3, and we'll just kick the can down the road again. Because that doesn't even create a solution. That just means in 10 or so years, we're exactly where we are today, but it's not our problem today. Instead of coming up with a real lasting solution. We won't be asking you to hold large stacks of seasonal currency to unlock a chest at the end of every season actively. Instead, we'll be dropping singular keys throughout your playtime that allow you to extract better rewards from the chest at the end of the seasonal activity. This will create a simpler relationship where you know that even if you have one key, you're getting better rewards. It also represents the repositioning of these chests as true bonuses, not requirements. Unlike today's seasonal currencies, keys won't drop every time you complete an activity. To compensate for this change, we've made the base rewards for each seasonal activity completion better so that you can earn and spend a key. It's a meaningful bonus, not a requirement to engage in the seasonal playlist. Finally, by default, keys can drop from seasonal activities, which means you are no longer required to play content outside of the seasonal playlist to chase seasonal rewards. When they say seasonal playlist, is that specific? Like, so within Guild Wars, there's these like reward tracks within PvP, and then there's masteries within PvE. Are there multiple seasonal tracks happening at the same time, or is it one shared track that's across all content?
Just one shared track across all content, and each tier of that track is normalized. So it's the same amount of experience, but there's different ways that you can speed that up and get various different bonuses and things like that. So, and when they talk about the playlist, like there's essentially like, here's this kind of quest, here's this, do this, and here's these basic activities that end up kind of being this weekly kind of cycle and pattern. And then you end up having all these kind of challenges that unlock over the course of this time, which then allows players who get started later to kind of get caught up much faster because they were working on more challenges all at the same time, as opposed to those who are playing it week over week and maintaining that like concurrency.
And there's one playlist that all players are on at all times. We're all in the exact same one. We're all in the same seasonal playlist at the same time.
Yeah.
And I cannot go back and do any previous seasonal playlists.
No, you can go do those. Like all this, the previous seasonal content's there. The only thing that is not currently is the battle pass. But and that was the change they brought in with Witch Queen, which is really good. What's Chris is saying that's not correct. If you let me know where I'm wrong on that one, Chris, because like you can go do like the previous quests from previous seasons. Okay. But I don't think that, I'm curious about the activity.
I just want to understand, like, are we all on Season of Defiance at the same time, and we're not on any previous seasons at the same time? So it's kind of like we're all on the same tombstone at the same time, and you can't go grind previous tombstones. Those end up getting lumped into the poetic system, but they're not as meaningful as they were when they were the active. So you have to play the playlist for each season that is still active. All right. So you're already starting to have this very like FOMO feel. And like, that's one of the things that like WoW really struggles with, is that if you're not on the current patch content, everything else feels a little bit meaningless instead of meaningful. So you feel like they took all the time and effort to put this in the game, but it doesn't feel as meaningful as what is highly incentivized within the current pass.
Right. And so that bundles people. And that's one of the things they want to talk about in each of, what they want to break that out. So it's not like, oh, I have nothing to do. It's like, oh, really the thing you're doing is the seasonal thing. Everything else has kind of had and lost its incentive.
Okay, cool. So on top of these changes in Season of Defiance, players can expect fewer total vendor upgrades, with each individual upgrade being more potent and some upgrades even offering a variance on the way you interact with seasonal activity. In Season of Defiance, we've also taken a big stab at the way we name our various progression systems and currencies. We want any player to read the name of something and immediately understand what it does. In short, to spend more time on playing and less time trying to understand what they are supposed to do. What game was it that we were watching the announcement and we got so excited when they said more time shooting? Was it Destiny?
It was Destiny. It's like less time between.
When they talked about Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, they were so pumped that Destiny 2 was going to spend more time shooting, less time in load screens, going to the tower and all that. And then the game launched, and I was in load screens, and I was in the freaking tower, and it was like, what are you talking about? There was this whole, like, we just want you to spend, and like, at that point, I was like, well, just give me a mini game to shoot in the load screen, because the shooting is why I play Destiny. It's so good. After Season of Defiance, we'll head into Season of the Deep. How long are seasons?
3 months.
Okay. With some time under our belt to react to recent player feedback, Season of the Deep will not feature a vendor upgrade paradigm. The same will be true for the following season. This doesn't mean players will never see a vendor upgrade system again, but instead means we want to create more varied experimental frameworks that slowly create a wide variety of different systems for players to show their investment into seasonal content. This variety will also extend into the types of content players experience in the moment-to-moment gameplay of our later seasons. In both Seasons of the Deep and Season 22, which I assume Season of the Deep is 21, the team is pushing the envelope to create more fresh activity experiences than like when we first unveiled the Shattered Realm in Season of the Lost or debuted Battlegrounds in Season of the Chosen. One thing we want to continue from last year is casting a wide net when it comes to the themes and fantasies our players can expect with each release. Lightfall already has a very different tone and setting from the Witch Queen, and we want to continue this tonal variety in our season content. From Reapers to Pirates to Cowboys, last year's seasons proved that Destiny 2 can encompass experiences that contain wildly varied inspirations and are committed to the adventures in Lightfall's collection of seasons, feeling just as thematically fresh from one another as they did last year. These stories, progressions, and themes aren't the only way we think we can stretch the player imagination space. Some of this is going to come from putting new systems into Destiny 2 or revisiting systems that aren't quite hitting the mark. In Lightfall, We'll be adding Guardian ranks to the game alongside rethinking Destiny 2 build crafting with loadouts. While we aren't going to go deep into either of those systems here, they both represent new lenses that we want to continue to apply to Destiny 2. For example, Guardian ranks aim to be the effortless way Guardians share their place in their journey with one another. No longer will the number next to your nameplate be a representative of how much you've grinded the season pass. Instead, it's a representation of your experience as a Guardian and the challenges you faced and overcome.
So, in regards to that, that's actually something I'm most excited about, especially as it relates to the experiences as a guardian, as opposed to that seasonal level of investment. That kind of in a way is stepping back into this level mindset. Like, how much time have you actually put into that? And the fact that that number has been resetting over and over and over again, I think is and will hopefully end up being kind of a real positive thing for that investment. Meaning, back to my original like frustration of, well, there's not really much that I can invest in now because that's just going to change. And the same thing vice versa for you. And hopefully that is how they end up kind of solving and bridging that gap, that it's like, oh, you're still investing in your guardian rank and your, into that. And what you're doing is still moving that needle forward. And that's what I'm hopeful and looking forward to, in that respect.
Okay. You're going to want a killer set of weapons for those challenges. And this year, we're going to change how you think about obtaining those weapons with some major updates to weapon crafting. While we love having some sources of deterministic perks, we've found that the route to getting weapons you want to craft can be too random. At the same time, we also believe that weapon crafting being a part of so many of our weapon chases has diminished the joy of simply getting a great perk roll as a drop. So here's what you can expect to change with weapon crafting in the year of Lightfall. Because they do their expansions annually, right?
Yes, once a year.
Okay. To create independent chases for both crafted and non-crafted weapons, starting with Lightfall, fewer of our total weapons will be craftable, and more of our weapons with long-term sources will get value from random perk rolls. To allow these non-crafted weapons to stand toe-to-toe with crafted weapons in Lightfall, in the year of Lightfall, more and more of our non-crafted weapons, starting with the new raid add-ups this year, will have the ability to be enhanced.
Yeah.
Enhancing allows your dropped weapon to start leveling up, use mementos, and gain access to both enhanced perks and enhanced intrinsic properties, but only the enhanced versions of the perks and masterwork that are already on the version of the weapon you are enhancing. Simply said, with some time and resources, enhancing allows you to take the random rolled weapon you've obtained and enhance its existing roll to match the full power of a crafted weapon. We are targeting to roll this out initially with Lightfall raid add-ups at the launch of Season of the Deep. Long term, we want to expand this functionality to most of our non-crafted weapon drops, but there are still some technical hurdles that we need to solve first. For crafted weapons, we will have some additional changes planned. You will never see deep sight on a weapon unless it is something you need to make the pattern progress on. You will see a red border in-game. You'll know it's valuable. Targeting Season of the Deep, we will also be adding a mechanism to activate deep sight on any craftable weapon they do not have the pattern for. So awesome. How does it work now, and how do you see that changing the day-to-day collection feeling?
I think for me, and I will have to let like Nanny or Chris kind of weigh in more on the crafting system, because I just have not really engaged with it. I've done it a little bit, but I more or less enjoyed the fact that they added leveling essentially back to the weapons themselves. And you kind of see as you use the weapon, it continues to have and level up, which in this case opens up like new patterns and perks and things like that. But that's one of the things that was really just for me and Witch Queen. I really did not engage with the crafting system itself, but what they're laying out here does sound fascinating. That enhancing that time that you spend with the weapon, being able to invest in that weapon, I think is going to be something that personally resonates well with me, because that's usually the kind of content, that horizontal kind of progression that I end up leaning into. Is like, yeah, you got that weapon. Okay, now you can continue to invest in that weapon itself to make it even better. And then, that's just going to be where I fall into that. So if I have Nanny or Chris want to kind of weigh in with any more details on how it currently functions, like they would have to be the experts in this case.
So when you get a weapon roll, when it drops, does that not just end up like Diablo, where like you get a really good weapon to drop, and then because it's the wrong stats, you don't care, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it's when it comes to perks, like you're chasing that kind of god roll. And Andy says that the changes are actually great because the current system means that players sometimes have to get 10 to 15 rolls of a weapon just to unlock the build and then leveling it up all the way for those enhanced perks.
Okay.
So that now that random weapons can have enhanced perks like crafted weapons, which means that you don't have to farm out so many rolls if you happen to get the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then how often do you think you find weapons when you're out grinding? Like crafting.
Oh, you get weapons all the time,
Okay.
but yeah, like it's doing the content, playing, etc. And then you might, not get exactly what you're wanting or what you're looking for.
I mean, what feels good to me is shooting things and then that candy drops, right? That nice shiny, it's something shiny. It's the same in Diablo.
Yeah. Ooh, candy.
Big
Oh,
stuff,
they're also changing
big
blues,
explosion
so
of,
great,
of enemies, and then a bunch of loot showers the ground. Like that's what makes those really satisfying. Action RPG style games where you're just like, you're in it, you're in the action, all this stuff's dying, and then loot drops. I think it's why chest runs in New World feel good, because that combat system really leans into that action RPG. And that's the only time that you feel like there's crazy amounts of like action combat and crazy amounts of loot. And it just feels like this crazy big loot pinata moment. Diablo feels like that all the time, even when you're by yourself, because you're pulling hordes of enemies. And when you look at something like Destiny, like it feels like that sometimes, especially because like the shooting feels so good. You're like, oh my God, they just keep coming. There's always something to shoot. It's constant trigger pulling. So that's good. All right. Finally, we want to tackle one more thing out of game with our goal of expanding the player imagination that's giving our players a little more of a sneak peek into releases before they hit servers. So while some of our releases this year will be kept secret until they hit players' machines, others, like Seas of the Deep, will preview and share key details ahead of time. We could have all the variety in the world, and that wouldn't matter much if we weren't also making sure the content that our players spend the most time with is engaging and interesting. There's a lot that goes into making a piece of Destiny content engaging, but at the Chewy Center, it's challenge. Last year, we spent a lot of time bringing all of our subclasses up to the Stasis 3.0 standard. During that time, not only did our abilities become more powerful, but their synergies with weapons and gear raised the total power tide for all boats. The result of these changes is a game with more compelling RPG, but at times lower levels of challenge in our core content. With a player base as large as Destiny's, the right level of difficulty is going to be different for everyone. While we are still committed to offering multiple difficulties in content, such as our campaigns, Nightfalls, secret missions, dungeons, and raids, we feel like the baseline challenge in most of our content is just too low. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And again, like the raids, and they have, especially with the latest season, the Seraph, the seasonal, activity. I thought the challenge was actually really good on that. And they really, I think you can kind of see that what they're talking about here already, kind of easing its way into the latest challenge. I think even the community kind of even echoed that. They're like, yeah, it's hitting us back, but you go out into the open world and like there's, like it's not that scary. It's not challenging. And you have so much. I've even run some old strikes, and it's like you just kind of just like, yep, melt everything down. And so I'm wondering if right now they're going to talk about tuning abilities, but I'm wondering if they're going to get into like talking about the current content offerings that they have and maybe some adjustments there as well.
So in Final Fantasy, to make content more challenging, it typically means more mechanically demanding, because most of the rotations are relatively straightforward and you're either doing it right or you're not, regardless of the content. And because there's not a direct feedback mechanism telling you when you do your rotation wrong, a lot of players that aren't doing it well don't know they're not doing it well. And so ultimately it's getting hit by things. And because of the way the game communicates mechanics, a lot of that is understanding the dance. And so the complexity of the dance, especially with the release of Omega Ultimate, the complexity of the dance is how we mark difficulty. Within shooters, though, that's a little bit harder, because typically when you just dial up the amount of life or damage that something does, it can start to make something feel like a bullet sponge. I think The Division is something that really comes to mind, where like sometimes I felt like, so we're just going to shoot this guy with 6,000 bullets and he's just going to be fine. And like he's just walking around and it's like, and like I know there's people that really enjoyed The Division. I think there was a lot of great underpinnings, but when I fought a boss, sometimes it just didn't feel good.
Yeah.
So how are they going to increase the base difficulty without just making it a bullet sponge?
Well, they've done mechanics and they've added, and that's been continual throughout it. So I think you're right. There is a mechanical side of it. I think also it's gonna probably maybe like have it things hit harder and either need to take up more damage, but but I don't think that's going to be their only lean in. Like they're talking about tuning abilities here, so let's go ahead and dive into that. It says to bringing back challenge to Destiny requires a two-pronged approach. If we just tuned up our enemies across the game, we would just start to encounter issues where combatants frequently one-shot players and would feel super spongy. As a result, even more relaxing content would require players to confirm to the most meta Guardian loadouts. Now, on the other hand, if we were only to tune the players efficiently, the RPG elements would start to feel like they matter less, and Destiny might start to lose its essential fantasy to bring this powerful battle wizard in space. So instead of focusing just on one vendor, we're going to take measured approaches to both the player toolkit and the strength of our monsters. Now let's start with the toolkit. Across both PvE and PvP, we believe that abilities dominate too many engagements due to the potency, which we don't want to nerf, and uptime, which we do want to tackle. Destiny is a game about guns and powers, and we want both to shine. So starting in Lightfall, we are moderately increasing ability recharge times across a wide selection of our abilities, as mentioned in the ability tuning preview last week. Now, we've also noticed the enemy commands that aren't hitting as hard as we want them to, specifically against max resilience guardians. So we're adjusting the amount of damage resistance granted by resilience and increasing the energy cost of resilience mods from 1 to 2 and minor mods from 3 to 4. And to give you some context, I think I was playing with Nanny and we were all having a good time. And they're like, oh yeah, the meta is resilience. And I was like, because before I was like recovery and speed and I was having fun, but then I started playing with them and like this last year and was getting just melted. Tuned that resistance up to 10. And it was like, you can't kill me. I mean, it's just like, it is ridiculously how powerful that was. So this seems fair. And also the fact that the mods, like that whole system is being updated, and I think in very positive ways, but increasing that ability to get that resilience up will end up being a huge benefit in that regards, so that there's a bigger cost to it. So you're sacrificing something if you do want that resilience. And it's not like that resilience means it's going to be an instant win for you. But it goes on and says, with the build crafting updates, we believe great builds will be much more accessible to the community. And while we still want your gear and your mods to be critical, some of the buffs to Guardian's damage and survivability were just too strong in the old system. So we've taken this opportunity to balance patch the gear-driven buffs. Now, I know that the last paragraphs might be scary to read, but we don't think that these changes are going to be as big swing of a balanced pendulum. More than anything, it's about wringing out some unintentional power creep, and we saw over the last year. We're committed, as always, to making your Guardian feel like the ultimate monster-killing machine, and I'm confident with Strand, our new buildcraft updates, and a suite of new weapons coming to Lightfall that you'll be making Zavala and Shax very proud. Now, on the enemy side of adjustments, so that's the Guardian side. For the enemies, but I promised a two-sided approach to the challenge, so let's talk about how things will be shaking up with enemy difficulty. Recently, we've been happy with the level of challenge present in the base heist battlegrounds. Yes, that is absolutely, I echo that. That's very good right there. To achieve this, we used a difficulty knob that enforces just how over-leveled we will let players be compared to the enemies they are fighting. This knob has always been present across our activities, and it's adjusted based on how evergreen we want the challenge and those missions. We were pretty aggressive with this adjustment in the Season of the Seraph, and it produced great results. So these base battleground playlists in Season of Defiance will use the same settings, carrying this approach over. And we're also going to be adjusting this same difficulty tweak to the Vanguard Ops playlist as well. That's great. We aren't going to set this playlist knob to a level quite as intense as the Battleground playlist, but we want to use this as a setting to make Vanguard Ops a more engaging and for the average Guardian starting Lightfall. This approach to power difficulty is also going to be present when players are roaming around Namora. And while we don't want the entire game to feel like it's tuned up to 11, we think these challenges will help enemy forces patrolling Namora feel dangerous and worth your attention. Now, They continue. You may have noticed that we have been experimenting a lot with our power settings over the last few seasons, and we're planning on taking even more experiments this year. We think that there are some major issues with power in Destiny 2 and how it prevents players from seeing some of our best content. So we'd like to make a big change in the system in the final shape. However, to understand more about how this changes can be improved, we want to keep tweaking power settings over the year of Lightfall. Some of these tweaks will be found in our back end with a little transparency in the average Guardian, while others will be front and center. For example, when Lightfall launches, we will have the power climb that is very similar to that of the Witch Queen, but later in Season of the Deep, we don't plan to raise the power or pinnacle cap at all. And I think, and I one of the things that has been talked about a lot within the community is that just give us the power cap, right? For the year. Don't sit here and make it always like ever increasing, just make it for the year and then have more ways that players can either reach that or invest in it. Like, or even the get to the cap, it gets harder and harder, but then as the year goes, it gets easier and easier, etc. Rather than continuing to kind of push that out a little bit further each and every time. But that's how I read that. That's how I read and understand that. It sounds like deep is going to be the power cap for the Lightfall, and then that won't increase until the next year.
Okay. Cool. Well,
you want to take the next section? Enrich our content.
At all, right? Enrich our content. There we go. With all these changes to power and pursuits, we also want to make sure there is plenty for players to sink their teeth into over the next year. For the last few years, we've been trying to attack this problem by trying to squeeze one more morsel of new content in each release. But I think we can get better results with a different strategy, making the existing depth of the incredible content of Destiny 2 more valuable to new and returning Guardians. Let's start with one of our most evergreen rituals, the Crucible. Player versus player combat is here to stay in Destiny 2, as we think it's one of the most inherently replayable parts of Destiny experience. Last year, we injected several new modes into PvP, from Rift to Eruption to Fortress. We're excited for some of these game modes to get more face time in the core ritual experience. We're not done adding the variety of the ways you engage in PvP. In Season of Defiance, we're looking at getting Countdown back into the game, along with a respawn variant of the game mode we call Countdown Rush, where players must detonate defuse both bombs on the map before the round ends. We also aim to run a series of Crucible labs, including a mode where player sandbox is dramatically changed. Weapon damage, ability uptime, and even ammo are also adjusted in a new mode tentatively called Checkmate Control. This mode will reward players who use their smarts and their skills. So if the only way the enemy has been able to shut you down in the past is a solo blade barrage, they might be in trouble. This isn't all we have planned for modes, so keep your eye on labs for more classic and all new modes later this year. Halo Infinite is a game that you and I have both been expressed frustration with multiple times. And one of the things that made it really rewarding early on, when it only had like 6 maps, and is the only reason we were able to stick with it as long as we could, is the number of ways that I could screw with things, because I'm the one that hosts our lobby. Is pretty vast. And so I would spend a couple hours after each Wednesday night building out new modes for the following week, kind of like a dungeon master in like a little RPG campaign of some kind. And so you guys would show up and have no idea what was next. We even sometimes had somebody bring a friend. Hey, I got a guy from work. He says he plays Halo and he'd love to play with us. And people would be like, wow, this is awesome. I'm excited to play with you guys. What are we doing tonight? And we would put them on a team, and then they would hop in the lobby and they'd go, what the hell is this? Because I adjusted our movement speed. I adjust gravity sliders. I change weapon loadouts, amount of life. I mess with the scoring system. So there's one mode that really stuck around that we called Speed Rockets. And you basically run around at hyperspeed with Quake-style gravity and jumping. And everybody is equipped with rocket launchers. But you all can have friendly fire. And you get points, and you get a -1 point if you kill an ally, +3 points if you kill an enemy, and -2 points if you kill yourself. Which means if you run into a small room and there's you and an enemy and an ally, and you aim at the floor and pull the trigger, that's a wash because everybody dies. You're -2, your ally's -1, they're -3. And so it encourages just shenanigans. We had another mode where we call it crab walking, and your lateral movement is dialed up. And so you're forced to move around the entire level strafing because your forward and backward movement is wildly limited. And so it's a whole bunch of people speed crab walking. And that's played with SWAT style kills. And so headshots kill. And the thing that makes headshots really hard is if somebody's strafing. And that's all people are doing. So they're all speed strafing. And so like I could screw with modes, and it added a lot of variety to the game where the lack of maps and the lack of basic ranked Slayer modes and stuff was there. So the fact that they're going to like try to bring this stuff in at a more native level really excites me. The idea of just saying like, all right, this week in Crystalline Conflict in Final Fantasy XIV, limit breaks are going to generate 300% faster. Go. And like you just have no idea what it's going to do. Is it going to be balanced? Probably not. But like you just say like, and then we'll put some cool cosmetic behind it, do it 10 or 12 times, have a lot of fun, have a lot of laughs. It's probably not balanced. Yeah, we'll have our balanced mode too. But sometimes it's just nice to just play something for the fun of it. And a little bit of chaos goes a long way. Now, we think that a steady stream of novel game modes and a reigning of player power is going to do a lot for the health of our PvP ecosystem, but we're still committed to keeping true to our Crucible Maps plan, which means the arrival of Meltdown in Season of the Deep, a brand new Vex Network map in Season 22, and the return of Citadel in our last season before the final shape. We will also be looking at our existing maps and doing a spawning return pass on many of them this year to improve how various modes flow. In matchmaking, we still don't feel we've nailed the trade-off between fair matches and good connections. We still need to get features like a dynamic skill ranges in game to allow for players across all skill levels to get consistently high quality connections in their matches. As we continue to adjust algorithms and improve connection qualities, we are also turning our eyes towards lobby balancing, where we aim to construct matches with a more consistent skill spread among players on both teams. We also want to continue to zoom out and make sure that we're upgrading the meta systems that encourage folks to play PvP. Think of this like the Iron Banner revamp, our recent increases to Iron Banner reputation, and our commitment to having 3 Iron Banner matches per season this year. While we haven't settled on all the final details, we are currently looking at the rewards and matchmaking structures of our Trial of Osiris and would like to push more updates to that mode this year in order to more consistently keep the population at healthier levels. Finally, in competitive, we want to improve the speed at which players climb the rank that most matches their Crucible skill to ensure it's clear why you won or lost the specific number of ranked points shown after a match.
Yes, I'm excited for this. This is one of the things that I felt like one of the things that brought me back with the Witch Queen was their investment back into PvP and then bringing in more maps, more modes. I think this is going to be really exciting for me to see, especially with those adjustments as well. So honestly, I thought they've done a really decent job this year, and it's going to be neat to see what the impact of the skills and their adjustments to difficulty will be kind of adding in. Now, for the next section, it says exotic mission rotator. It says trials won't be the only thing getting love as far as rituals go. So let's talk about the PvE side of things. Over the years, we've added a ton of great exotic missions like Prestige and Operation Seraph Shield to Destiny 2. This year, not only will we continue to create new exotic missions, but starting in Season 22, we'll be adding in an exotic mission rotator. So this is some of the stuff that got Sunset. One of the things like 0 Hour is like just this awesome mission where it's just so good. Like these missions that they put in like are like in my mind like pinnacle PvE mission content, and to see them bringing this in from a rotation perspective, I think I'm really excited to see that. Now, like our legacy raids and dungeon rotators, the exotic mission rotator will feature exotic missions from the past that rotate on a weekly cadence and offer great rewards for players willing to dive into some classic content. Season 22, this rotator will contain the exotic mission from seasons 13, 16, and 19, Prestige, Vox Obscura, and Operation Sheriff Shield. This framework implemented, we hope to use this rotator in the future to bring some of Destiny 2's most classic missions back to the fold. I personally would love for people to be able to play 0 Hour who never had the chance to play that mission. Go ahead.
So Final Fantasy XIV, because story is mandatory, was forced to, in the very design of what the game is, include a roulette system that was there on day one of ARR. And it is a massive part of what we still do today. And so that system has grown and evolved and changed in what it means to different players. But roulettes are a big part of the community as a whole. And what that has accidentally done is a side perk that they could have never foreseen. And Yoshi Peace talked about how he did not foresee Final Fantasy becoming as widely successful and acclaimed as it has. You just could never have banked on a game relaunching and having this kind of success. That roulette system has allowed old content to age much more gracefully than most games can. Now, if you have a lateral system like Guild Wars 2, it's not necessarily as necessary. As long as the rewards for that content are interesting, it'll live entirely on its own feet. But in any game that moves forward and funnels players into new playlists, such as the vertical progression systems of World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy, or like Destiny has, where they have 9,000 different pricing models they've tried over the years, and you have no idea what's going on with all the different seasons. It's really hard to keep track of all this. And so then what ends up happening is they're trying to release content at this cadence, and you're trying to wow players. And so there is this, it's called like Frodrick's or Herod's treadmill or whatever, where there's this idea that whatever peak you've lived at before, whatever the best you've ever normalized your life in whatever aspect, the most money you've made in a year, the most fit you've ever been in a year, the happiest you've been in a relationship in a year, that is now the number to beat. And getting back to it, you will feel simply adequate. And anything below that will not feel good. And so if you've ever made $1 million a year, something crazy, and you made it multiple years in a row, then now making anything less than that feels like a waste of your time. And that applies to everything, including video games. And so the problem is that if you're used to releasing 5 raid bosses every 3 months or something, and that's what you always do, there's nothing special about it anymore. And if you release 6, it would feel amazing. But if you drop to 4, what the hell? I've been lied to. So the downside of that is you've made a never-ending hungrier and hungrier player population. And the only way to satisfy them is to find a way to release content to them cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And so one of the best ways to do that is to be able to use your backlog. Imagine if you had 100 bosses that were already designed and implemented in your video game. It'd be really great if those did something. And so that's something that I think World of Warcraft does a little bit of, could do a lot better of. And it sounds like that's what Destiny wants to do. Like, what if we went back and said, okay, we're going to keep doing new stuff. Absolutely. But in addition to that, there's all these experiences that maybe you took a season off or something like that. And those could be new to you at a fraction of the cost because they are already in the game. So I think that's really exciting. And I think it's something that an aged MMO needs and a new MMO won't see the benefit of. But the time to start investing in it is when you're new. So like you have to spend all this money making this system function when you're brand new, planning for the future. It's what you and I talked about with the trust system in Final Fantasy. The most exciting time for the trust system introduced in Shadowbringers, in my opinion, was the day Endwalker went live. And I said that when they announced the trust system. It's cool now. It's going to look like clairvoyance when you're 2, 4, 10 years from now.
Yeah, down the road, you're going to be like, oh, wow. Yeah, oh, your game doesn't do that? Our game does, you know. Now, refreshing the strikes, another area of PvE that we think we can have a big effect on is the Vanguard rituals. We have already talked about some, are going to be talking about matching Vanguard Ops playlists, more engaging by raising the challenge level. But with Lightfall, we're also going to shake up some of these activities inside the playlist. This effort will begin by refreshing the Lake of Shadows, cool, and the Arms Dealer strikes, awesome. I actually did those the other day. Both activities had their objectives and encounters reimagined and upgraded to match the combat engagement of these levels. And some of our more recent strike entries, such as Lightblade and Proving Grounds. In addition, we are also taking strikes that have not been updated recently, such as Exodus Crash and the Inverted Spire, and dramatically reducing their presence in the Vanguard Ops playlist while eliminating them from Nightfall rotations. These strikes will be available for direct launch, but until they get brought up to this engagement parity with some of our more recent Vanguard content, they will not show up as frequently as part of this ritual gameplay. Now, and aside from the strikes, we're also going to be upgrading the Battlegrounds integrated with Vanguard Ops alongside Lightfall in Season 16 and Season 19. Battlegrounds will be added to the Vanguard Ops playlist, and we really like the fast enemy-filled chaos of Battlegrounds. So this year, we'll also be adding a selection of Battlegrounds as Nightfalls. Oh, wow. That is awesome. This process will begin with the Mars Heist Battleground being part of the Nightfall rotation in Season of Defiance, and we expect more battlegrounds to be following suit each season. Now, we're excited to see how players tackle the Season of Defiance first Nightfall rotation, where 4 out of the 6 Nightfalls will be new or refreshed content coming to the Grandmaster rotation for the first time. We expect even older Nightfalls to feel rekindled by their new layout options, since the match game modifier is also being retired from Nightfalls and will launch in Nightfall or Lightfall. Yes.
As we get further away from our Lightfall in our seasonal schedule, we're going to make some targeted changes to ritual content based on what we've observed about why players engage in this content. While we don't expect these changes to make it in the Season of Defiance, over time we want to start pushing both more rewards to ritual content and more options to engage with our ritual content. This will include changes such as moving the initial source of obtaining exotic armor away from the lost sectors and back into core rituals, and no longer asking players to earn all 3 of the ritual pursuit ornaments in seasonal challenges, and allowing players to earn more new rewards and complete more of their weekly challenges by player content of their choice, not just in the newest seasonal activity playlist. This rebalancing of objectives and rewards is going to be a slow burn over the year of Lightfall, and we're going to take more of a direct approach in our last season of the year, dedicating a significant amount of development time to a more core ritual-focused season. While this season will have plenty of new activity and story content, we want to take this time right before the final shape to crisp up our core rituals and pursuits as we head into the final expansion of the Light and Darkness saga. This last seasonal effort is just now getting underway, so expect more details as we get further into the year. So as they talk about this, rebuilding core systems, reusing old content, this starts to sound a lot like the various kind of affirmations that some of these older MMOs have had to do as they start to wrap up their narrative sagas. Because historically, in a franchise, wrapping up your narrative saga means the end of a game. Whether it be a single player game or a trilogy, it tends to mean the end because it's the end of the story. So when the credits roll, the credits roll. But in an MMORPG, that's not necessarily what a player wants. That was a really great end to the story. I feel that Endwalker was really great. I feel that End of Dragons, while I'm not caught up in the story in that game, it's been relatively well received. And I feel that WoW is due for a refresh. And so as they talk about turning over a new leaf, putting the end to that chapter without putting an end to the game is something that players have to speculate about. And it feels like, why would I invest in this final chapter if I haven't been along for the ride, if you're just going to hit reset on the other side with something like Destiny 3 or Guild Wars 3 or WoW 2 or whatever. And so the way they get out in front of that is they talk about investments, new servers, updates to hardware-based things like bringing Guild Wars to DirectX 11, or major core system upgrades where you talk about something that is substantially expensive. So when you talk about rebuilding core systems in the final season of this expansion, as you look to go into the final expansion, that doesn't sound like to me the sort of thing that would be worth the effort if it was only going to last one more year. So do you think after the final shape, they're going to let Guild Wars 2 go to rest? Or do you think this is kind of a soft confirmation that there might be just Guild Wars 2 beyond this Light and Dark saga?
I feel like Guild Wars 2 and Destiny 2 have that very same kind of like ecosystem. So it's funny to me that you use that same that game in reference to this, because they were both kind of in this boat. I do feel like Destiny 3 should happen at some point. I would like it if they just called it straight up Destiny and you end up kind of looking at it that perspective, but they could continue to add in expansions. So honestly, right now, I think it's really anybody's guess. If they don't come out this year and announce like, hey, new expansions or whatever, like I maybe once we finish the story of Lightfall and they decided to do these seasons, maybe that's when they make these kind of announcements. Or it could be that you see the final shape and so the final shape would be 2024 and that would last a year. So by 2025, here's Destiny 3, guys. Here's the next, 10-year plan for this, for this game. We're going to just keep going and finding some way to kind of make that connection. Here's the, the core reasons why everything's kind of, starting over. I don't know. Like, honestly, part of me wants that new, like start, but knowing that doing that, you'd end up, what's the cost? What's the cost of the players? Is it better to continue to enhance this core experience and go forward from there? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, to wrap up the video here, we got one last section, connecting our guardians. A lot of what we have planned this year is right around the corner, including big features like commendations and guardian ranks with the launch of Lightfall. The commendation system, again, like Final Fantasy 14 and Destiny, like there's a lot of crossover between these communities. This is the first step in creating stronger connections between guardians this year. We can be hard to reach out to someone you don't know. Commendations are an icebreaker, a simple way of saying thanks to players that you appreciate playing with. Over time, players will accumulate a ton of different combinations that will help build the story of how others in Destiny 2 perceive you. Certain combinations like Pace Setter or Saint's Favorite are only available to be given out in Trials of Osiris, while others are perceptive and knowledgeable are given out to the raid and dungeon content. Eventually, combinations you earn will become a history of where you've been and what you've done. With these combination systems, those at the highest level of Guardian ranks have to be will have to proven to be folks that consistently appreciate by others in the community. Sometimes it will be because there are the kinds of people who are willing to use heavy lifting when organizing a large group of players. Sometimes it will be because they aren't the kinds of people comfortable speaking up, and they are always doing what is needed to be done and to help the group overcome the obstacle in front of them. Over the last few weeks, we've been playing with a bunch of heist battlegrounds, and every so often get matched with a pair of folks that look like they've got a lot of synergy with, and we end up absolutely crushing the hive infestation. The joy has to come with a tiny sense of regret that not living just a few weeks into the future will be able to pass along a couple of accommodations to show my thanks. I will wait for Lightfall to be everyone's hands so we can have an opportunity to grow the Guardian with our fellow Guardians. I'll let you take over the next section.
Commendations represent just the first step of reaching out to one another. If players want to generate a deeper relationship, they need to have the opportunity to communicate. For the last few years, Destiny 2 has often felt too lonely for those who aren't playing with folks they know. In order to improve this, we'd like to invest in the overall chattiness in Destiny 2. Bold. As games like League of Legends are like, the appropriate amount of player interaction is no player interaction. As they start to like ban chats in some of these games, it's like, we think chattiness is good. Bold. This is not something that's going to happen right away with Lightfall, but we'd like to start opening up more lines of communication between our players in the future. Eventually, we want to change our game-wide text chat channels so you have more frequent opportunities to reach out to a fellow Guardian. Over time, we'd like to continue to invest in deeper chat moderation, better filtering, and bigger features like speech to text. We think that text chat is a great way for players to communicate with one another at their own pace while still retaining some anonymity. That's the problem, is how anonymous somebody is. All right. This does not mean that text chat is going to become required for Destiny 2. We still plan on allowing anyone inside Destiny 2 the ability to avoid text chat entirely, meaning they will never automatically be added to a social text chat. We also plan to allow anyone the option to quickly leave channels on a case-by-case basis if the chat is trending in a way that makes their game experience worse. This is going to be very new for Destiny, so I expect that we'll be learning a lot from these first steps in tweaking our plans with chat and how various channels are as we go forward and get feedback from all of you. The last piece of our social puzzle for the year is our biggest, Fireteam Finder. Initially, we hope to get our take on a first-class in-game looking for group tool in players' hands this summer with Season 22, alongside our next reprised raid, making it a perfect pairing for new raiders. But as our plans become more solidified, we realize that the features needed to make and to create a truly top-notch LFG experience, as a phrase. Oh, it's a bold undertaking. We were going to require a bit more time. So while that reprised raid is still coming out this summer, we're pushing Fireteam Finder out to our final season of the year alongside a brand new dungeon. We think that a truly first-class LFG system won't be perfect, full stop, until we can see how our players use it. We want to make sure that the initial launch still has a ton of features that will allow players to find a fire team inside Destiny. This means that Fireteam Finder you can queue up from anywhere in the game. The ability to tag your posts with keywords to describe the kind of group you're running and the kind of people you're looking to recruit. The option to create groups where folks can join automatically, allowing you to get right into the action. And the power to create groups where you as a leader can approve or deny each person trying to join up, giving you tight control over the kind of group you're putting together. I can't wait for Fireteam Finder to make its way into players' hands later in Lightfall's year and see how many more Guardians will be able to enjoy the best content in the game alongside all of you. So, those are the big 4 for the year. Expanding players' imaginations, bring challenge back to Destiny, enrich our content, and connect our Guardians. It's not going to happen all at once, and we will most certainly will try some things that aren't going to land right on the first attempt. But we are going to continue to take risks with Destiny 2 because we think taking risks is essential to surprising and delighting our players. I think group finders are incredibly hit and miss. There are elements of them that are absolutely the key to making things like big world bosses possible, big group events possible, easily just knocking out your dailies with something that doesn't require a lot of communication. They are also the very nook and cranny where being pushed out of a community can fester.
It's gonna be neat to see what that kind of listing ends up entailing and what kind of activities you can do while in a listing, because it would be kind of nice to be able to say, hey, I'm listing for a raid, and while that listing is open, I'm going to go ahead and run activities and let that fill up and say, hey, we're going to do this raid I would like to do the raid here in 2 hours. And so, yeah, jump in. And while I'm waiting, I can go and do activities. The other side of it too, would be in terms of, because, obviously Final Fantasy 14 makes a great comparison here. It's like, yeah, the tools can definitely be worthwhile and used, but the issue I have was the structure, the payment structure with Destiny and the Fireteam Finder, because imagine now saying, hey, I want to run this dungeon. You must own dungeon key, because it's not included in the base game. It's additional a la carte content or collect, like you buy the digital, collector's edition.
You could be carried into it.
Well, it's not even that. It's just, I just feel like the better solution would have been like, if you guys need, just raise the base price of the expansion and have that cover the key and then still sell the collector's edition. Don't put it even extra in terms of that content, because I was like, all of us an LFG must own collector's edition. That would be fine. Or your solution of being, as long as somebody in your party has the key, then you're good to go. Then that could solve that problem as well. Cause then it's like, okay, cool. We're good. I don't have to worry about that.
You build like battle passes, right? Cause then you don't get access to the battle passes. So there's still a reason to buy it.
Yeah.
But the reason is not access to the content. The reason is that there's this other set of rewards or something like that. I don't know what the perfect solution is. I can tell you that that's also going to vary region to region. When I am in other parts of the world and I go to a fast food place and they charge me for a packet of ketchup, that feels like they're nickel and diming me. But when I say that to whoever I'm with, they're like, do you just expect it for free?
Yeah.
And as an American, I'm like, yeah, you can take as many as you want. They're just out. They're just in a bin and you can just have them. You wouldn't even technically have to buy anything. You could just walk into a taco shop and grab packets of hot sauce and walk out. Etiquette says don't, but they're not charging me for it. Unless it's a place that has a premium sauce, like a handmade, there's a fried chicken place near me that has a special sauce, and that used to cost 25 cents. Now it's 39 cents. Cause I got one the other day. And so that's a different thing, but the little packets, it just is what it is. Just give me the number of packets. So I don't know. I don't know what the perfect thing is. I know that the LFG is the hardest portion of everything they're doing. As much as all that stuff is hard work and it's a ton of dev work, it's a very clear path. We have a goal, we have a team, we're doing it. But saying we want to build a good community isn't really entirely up to them, right? They can put all the tools in place and they can try to foster as best as possible. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what game you think does it best. It doesn't matter if you think it's WoW or if you think it's Guild Wars or if you think it's Final Fantasy or whatever MMO you play. It doesn't matter what game it is. There is somebody in that game that tried engaging publicly because they wanted to do a piece of content and did not have a group to do it. And the experience they had negatively impacted their view of the game. And within that group, there is a number of people that had that negative experience enough times that they quit.
Yeah.
They quit Final Fantasy or they quit WoW or they quit whatever because people suck. And so it just takes a couple of people that said, I put clear the raid and you came in and died, you idiot. And that's it. And so saying, don't worry, Now controller players are going to be able to talk smack as well. And now, like, because we're going to have text to speech. I got you. You have something bad to say? Oh, we're going to put it in chat. Like, that is an incredibly risky proposition, because you're saying I want to build a better community, and there are elements of it, like doing your weekly world boss clears in World of Warcraft, not possible. If I have to stand around in the tower to find a group, which, imagine, without any form of looking for group in Final Fantasy, imagine if you had to go to Charlian to find somebody to run a leveling roulette, and you had to just sit in Charlian until your group build. That would suck. Suck.
Yeah.
So, like, there are elements of it that are absolutely positive, but the other 3 tenets that they listed for this year, I see ways that those are somewhere between neutral and good. It's like the game either gets better or it stays the same, which means it's just as good as it was last year. Mm-hmm. Within the community stuff, that is absolutely a turning point for an MMO, where you have taken, as they put in their final statement, risk, where you are either going to make the game better, or, as many MMOs have gone through, there are elements of it, maybe some is positive, but there are elements of it where people are like, I remember when they added LFG, and something was taken away from the game, and it never came back. There was damage done to the community as a result of this.
Well, and obviously what we'll end up seeing is, like they said, they're not going to land on their feet every time, and it's going to be like in a constant set of adjustment. I think the looking for group tool is something that's needed. They've, over the course of this and with Lightfall, they're basically looking at these tools that people have built that are kind of third party and bringing them into game, which I think is the right choice, because then you're opening it up to more people. And this is them saying, hey, what mods are people using out there? Let's go ahead and make that a core feature and hopefully kind of make it that. But it's like, the thing is, like, when you're dealing with people, and it's usually what I always say, the misaligning expectations, it's like, oh, I expected that we were going to do this, but we did that. That's where you see that friction. And that's where you'll see that stuff spill out on the internet. And for like big Destiny channels, I'm sure that will end up probably driving lots of content.
Yeah. And I cleared it in 15 minutes last week. You would just be excited to one day get a clear. We get into a group together. This could end poorly. Yeah. Because you're like, man, this is just so awesome. We're progressing. And I'm like, dude, what the hell? You are wasting my time.
I think it comes down to kind of, though, that if you can foster a system of empathy and making it more rewarding to make for like a veteran to make somebody a better player, like you can, if you can incentivize that, and you can incentivize the level of empathy, you can create that. Final Fantasy 11 is a great example of that. They wanted to foster empathy. Like when you saw somebody die, you too knew how bad that felt, and you wanted to like help them and raise them. And okay, what can we do to help make sure that doesn't happen again? And it built in that sense. It came with the cost of where it's not a game for everybody, because like some people just want to be jerks, but that's going to be how it ends up being. Now, on that note, guys, that was a massive post. We've gotten a little bit over time, so I do need to get back. We're finishing up a sprint, so I got to go start confirming all the PBIs and all the good stuff. So thanks so much for hanging out. Chris will be continuing over on Twitch today on Final Fantasy, and be sure to mark the calendars for later today, 4:00, if you want to go check out some of my comedy set that's going live. And also I'll be live on Twitch on the 25th for our community game day, where we'll be doing some Destiny. We'll be doing some New World. We're going to have a fun day. I got a fun day planned. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. I'm going to hit end broadcast. I'm going to send you guys on y'all merry way. Thanks for being here, and we will see you on Friday.